The Galactic Council Chamber was a marvel of engineering, a gleaming sphere of polished obsidian and shimmering force fields. Representatives of 100 worlds sat in floating seats arranged in a perfect spiral, their voices a hushed murmur of intrigue. At the center of it all stood a single figure, a war-scarred veteran of the Narcovian Empire, Commander Lorith, his hulking frame marred by old battles and recent horrors. The air thrummed with anticipation as the Supreme Arbiter, a towering insectoid with too many eyes and too little patience, clicked its mandibles. Commander Lorith, you are summoned here to testify before the Galactic Council on the matter of humanity. Our intelligence suggests that their military capabilities are manageable. You, however, claim otherwise. The veteran exhaled sharply, the gills on his neck flaring in irritation. You don't understand. You think you fought humans. You haven't. Not really. A chorus of skeptical chortles echoed through the chamber. A feline diplomat from the Romasian Dominion flicked her tail dismissively. We've engaged their fleets. Their technology is unremarkable. Their male soldiers, though persistent, are predictable in combat. What are you suggesting? That we should fear them? Loritha's single remaining eye glowed with a haunted gleam. Not the men, he rasped. The women. The chamber fell into an awkward silence. Then a rotund amphibious delegate let out a burbling laugh. You are telling us that we should be concerned about human females? Lorith clenched his massive hands into fists, the memory of his last encounter with them sending a phantom ache through his still healing wounds. Concerned? No. You should be terrified. A thin, eel-like diplomat from the keener Confederacy sneered. Preposterous. Human females are smaller than their males. Their bone density is weaker. They don't care about any of that, Lorith interrupted, his voice rising. They don't fight like warriors. They fight like something personal has been taken from them. Like every battle is an outlet for years of rage they've had to swallow down. A tall, avian representative ruffled its feathers. Surely you exaggerate. Loritha's mandibles clicked shut, his body going rigid. Let me tell you how we learned this lesson. And you will listen. The Supreme Arbiter waved a clawed limb. Proceed. The veteran took a deep breath, recalling the moment it all went wrong. The war against humanity started simply enough. We attacked their outer colonies, expecting resistance, but nothing we couldn't handle. Their male soldiers fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. It should have been a swift victory. He let the silence hang before continuing. Then they arrived. The council members leaned in. We first noticed it when their frontline tactics changed. Where their men fought with rigid formations and protocol, these new human warriors, these women, fought with a terrifying mix of precision and chaos. They were smaller, faster, harder to predict. They didn't charge into battle with honor. They baited us, mocked us, toyed with us. He exhaled shakily. I led an assault on the colony of Halcyon 7. Intelligence suggested it was lightly defended. We expected an easy occupation. The moment we landed, we knew something was wrong. A reptilian official leaned forward. Explain. Loritha's jaw tightened. The moment our forces breached the city perimeter, we were met, not with silence, not with surrender, but with a voice over the colony's loudspeakers. He swallowed. Oh, look, boys, the aliens finally showed up. Too bad for them, we're in charge now. A few council members chuckled at the imitation of a human female voice. Lorith did not. We should have left. Immediately. Instead, we proceeded. He ran a hand over his scarred face. The first attack came from the rooftops. Not snipers. No, that would have been standard. Instead, they dropped entire vehicles onto us. Vehicles that they rigged with explosives because, as one of them shouted, "If I can't have my car, neither can you, you space freaks." A few delegates blinked in confusion. But that was just the beginning. They didn't fight fair. They never fought fair. They used their size to slip through cracks in our formations. They stole our weapons and improvised. One took down a shock trooper with nothing but a frying pan and what I assume was years of suppressed rage. He shuddered. They talked during battle. Constantly. Not military commands, insults. Sarcasm. As I was dueling one in hand-to-hand combat, she actually paused to criticize my footwork. In the middle of the fight, one of the council members muttered, "Unbelievable." Loritha's voice dropped. It got worse. We managed to capture one of them. Just one. She sat in our holding cell, tied down, no weapons, no hope of escape. He hesitated. Or so we thought. He looked up, I scanning the silent chamber. We should have known something was wrong when she smiled. A cold hush fell over the room. She didn't beg. She didn't struggle. She smirked. And she said, "I just needed a nap, thanks for the accommodations." One of the delegates coughed. And Loritha's claws dug into the table. She escaped within the hour. How? I still don't know. The footage shows her casually undoing her restraints with what appears to be a hairpin. Then she lectured the guards on letting a lady free when she asks nicely, before incapacitating all of them with a tray of food. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. And then Lorith said, voice hollow. She called for reinforcements. Not through a communication device. No. She simply walked into our command center, took the radio from my second-in-command, and said, "Hey, ladies, you're late. Bring wine." Silence. The supreme arbiter rubbed its temples. Wine. Loritha's voice dropped to a whisper. They arrived, and they brought wine. The silence deepened. We were slaughtered. One of the elder diplomats, an ancient being with deep cosmic wisdom, leaned forward. "Commander, let me clarify. You are saying your elite forces were overpowered by an army that drank alcohol in the middle of battle?" Lorith hesitated. No, it wasn't alcohol. It was a ritual, a bonding moment. It made them stronger. They toasted before charging. Toasted. Like it was some grand celebration. He took a shaky breath. They sang as they fought. Another delegate scoffed. That is absurd. Loritha's eye darkened. I still hear it. At night. Their battle hymn. A few leaned in. Girls just want to have fun. No one spoke. And then, Lorith added, voice barely above a whisper, they did. Total, absolute silence filled the chamber. The supreme arbiter took a slow, deliberate breath. Commander Lorith, are you saying the Galactic Council should reconsider hostilities with humanity? Lorith didn't answer right away. He looked each delegate in the eye. Finally, he exhaled. I am saying, if you value your lives, your sanity, you will never start a war against human women. The silence that followed felt like the calm before a cataclysm. The supreme arbiter stared at him. Then, in a voice barely audible, he muttered, "We are so utterly doomed." And for the first time since entering that chamber, Lorith smiled. The air was thick with the acrid scent of plasma burns and charred metal. Smoke coiled through the ruins of Halcyon 7. Its once thriving colony, now a battleground littered with the wreckage of Narcovian war machines and the smoldering remains of their shattered arrogance. Commander Lorith crouched behind a fractured durasteel barricade, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His elite battalion, once the pride of the Narcovian Empire, was in shambles. The remnants of his forces huddled behind whatever cover they could find, their shimmering armor dulled by soot and blood. He risked a glance over the barricade. The battlefield stretched before him like a scene from some fevered nightmare. And at the center of it they stood. A squad of human women, clad in dust-streaked combat fatigues, moved through the war-torn streets with a confidence that sent a fresh wave of unease through his battered frame. They were unarmored, save for light combat vests, their weapons battered but functional. But it wasn't their equipment that made his bones ache with dread. It was the way they carried themselves. They weren't just soldiers. They were something far worse. They were agitated. The leader of the human squad, a tall, dark-haired woman with piercing eyes and an infuriating smirk, adjusted the strap of her rifle and surveyed the battlefield like she was picking a spot for a picnic. "All right, ladies," she called out, her voice laced with equal parts amusement and barely contained violence. "We got company. Try not to break them too fast. I need something to punch in the next 5 minutes, and I don't feel like waiting for backup." Another woman, shorter, stockier, with arms like she could rip a Narcovian war beast in half, cracked her knuckles. You sure? The last ones didn't last nearly long enough. Lorith inhaled sharply. The last squad they had encountered had been reduced to a sobbing, disarmed heap in under 3 minutes. A third human, blonde and deceptively delicate-looking, examined a stolen plasma rifle with mild disappointment. Ugh, cheap alien tech. I miss my old rifle. She turned to a wide-eyed Narcovian prisoner, still cowering where she had left him. You guys build everything with secondary explosion triggers. Huh? You know that's just asking for trouble, right? The prisoner whimpered. Lorith swallowed hard. They had to move. Now. He signaled to his remaining soldiers, a quick series of hand gestures meant to coordinate their escape. But before they could make it 3 steps, a voice rang out from the human squad. Hey, where do you think you're going? Every Narcovian soldier froze. Lorith closed his eye, cursing inwardly. That was the tone. That specific tone. It was not the bellow of an enemy commander, nor the battle cry of an enraged warrior. It was something infinitely more terrifying. It was the tone of a human woman who had just about had enough. Slowly he turned. The dark-haired woman, the leader, stood with her arms crossed, tapping her foot against the dirt like she was waiting for someone to explain why her coffee order was wrong. You invade our colony, she said, her voice level but deadly. Blow up our buildings, shoot at our friends. And now you think you can just leave? Without so much as an apology? That's rude. One of Loritha's younger soldiers, a recruit barely out of his spawning cycle, whimpered. Do we surrender? Lorith didn't answer. Because the truth was, surrendering didn't seem to improve anyone's odds. The blonde soldier with the stolen plasma rifle chimed in. I swear, if they surrender again, I'm going to be pissed. It's no fun when they just give up. The shorter woman cracked her neck. Then we make them work for it. That was all the warning they gave. The humans moved. Lorith barely had time to shout a warning before they were everywhere. They weren't just fast, they were unpredictable. One moment, the dark-haired leader was standing in front of him. The next, she had vaulted over a barricade, delivering a flying knee to one of his lieutenants with bone-crunching efficiency. A plasma bolt screeched past his head. He turned just in time to see the blonde soldier catch a rifle midair, fire off 3 perfectly placed shots, and then toss it aside like it was an empty beverage container. Chaos erupted. A Narcovian warrior tried to engage the stocky human in melee combat, swinging a blade capable of cleaving through reinforced steel. She caught it with one hand. Then, with what appeared to be mild irritation, she snapped the blade in half and smacked the soldier across the face with a blunt end. Lorith saw one of his own officers raise a communicator, probably to call for reinforcements. He never got the chance. The dark-haired leader lunged forward, grabbing the device out of his hands. Excuse you, she snapped. Who said you could make a phone call during my fight? Then she hurled the communicator to the ground and stomped on it. Lorith turned, already running. He had to get to his dropship. Had to escape. He could warn the Empire. Warn everyone. A voice called out behind him. Oh no, you don't. Something grabbed his shoulder. Not a claw. Not a weapon. A hand. A human hand. Then he was airborne. His massive frame, easily twice the size of a human, was yanked off the ground and hurled through the air like a discarded rag doll. He barely had time to process the impact before he crashed into a pile of rubble, pain flaring through his exoskeleton. A shadow loomed over him. The dark-haired leader crouched beside him, resting her forearm on one knee. Her head tilted in that insufferably casual way that suggested she wasn't even remotely concerned about his survival. You look like you have some opinions about this battle, she mused, idly wiping dust off her pants. Want to share with the class? Lorith wheezed. His vision swam. You know, she continued conversationally, I was supposed to be on leave today. Leave. Do you know what that means? Lorith coughed. He did not know, nor did he think answering would help. It means, she said, leaning in, I was supposed to be at home, drinking wine and watching reality TV. But no, I had to come deal with this nonsense. She grabbed the front of his combat vest, hauling him up with alarming ease. So tell me, Commander, why should I let you leave when you already ruined my night? He had no answer. The stocky woman called out from across the battlefield. Jess, you done? We still got stragglers. Jess sighed, her grip tightening briefly before she shoved Lorith back to the ground. You're lucky I'm in a good mood. He did not feel lucky. She stood up, dusting off her hands. Tell your bosses something for me, will ya? He nodded weakly. Tell them, she said, cracking her knuckles. Don't start fights you can't finish. Then she turned on her heel and walked away, calling out to her squad, as if this had all been a minor inconvenience. Lorith lay there, staring up at the smoke-clogged sky, his body screaming in pain. They weren't warriors. They were something far worse. They were pissed-off human women. And they had won. Again. The chamber was silent. Not the kind of silence that came with thoughtful contemplation, nor the kind that accompanied deep political maneuvering. No, this was the suffocating, unnatural stillness of a group of beings confronted with something so utterly beyond their comprehension that their minds refused to process it. Commander Lorith stood at the center of it all, his single remaining eye surveying the stunned representatives of the Galactic Council. He let them sit with it, let them feel the weight of his words. He had spoken. He had told them everything. And now, he watched as the horrors of Halcyon 7 settled into their bones. The Supreme Arbiter, normally a paragon of composed authority, sat rigid in his elevated seat. His exoskeletal fingers tapped absently against the edge of the grand obsidian table, the only outward indication that his mind was working furiously. His mandibles twitched as if trying to form words that refused to come. A reptilian delegate from the Tsari Dominion broke the silence first. You mean to tell us, he said slowly, voice wavering despite his best efforts, that your war battalion, an elite force, was not only defeated but utterly humiliated? Loritha's jaw clenched. He wanted to deny it, wanted to soften the truth, to make it sound less pathetic. But he couldn't. Because the truth was worse than humiliation. It had been a slaughter. Yes, he admitted, voice rough with the weight of it. That is exactly what I am telling you. The room erupted. A Romasian ambassador, her feline features contorted in disbelief, let out a sharp hiss. Impossible. Human males are formidable, yes, but they have never displayed this level of ferocity. How could the females be more dangerous? Lorith exhaled, shaking his head. You're looking at this the wrong way. The issue isn't their strength or their technology. It's their mindset. Human men fight with honor, strategy, discipline. He leaned forward, placing both hands on the council's table, his voice dropping to a low growl. Human women fight like the universe owes them something, and they've just now decided to collect. A wave of unease rippled through the gathered officials. The Supreme Arbiter finally spoke. You have provided no proof beyond your own account, Commander. While your reputation is formidable, we require evidence before considering any action. Lorith smiled grimly. He had anticipated this. They needed to see it. He reached for a data module clipped to his belt. Very well, he said, pressing the activation switch. You want proof? Here. A holographic display crackled to life above the council table, broadcasting grainy war footage pulled from his own battlefield recorders. The delegates watched, expressions shifting from mild skepticism to barely contained horror. On the screen, Narcovian soldiers, strong, well-armed warriors, advanced through the ruined cityscape of Halcyon 7. They moved in coordinated formations, their rifles scanning for targets. Then the humans emerged. The footage showed a group of women dropping from above, moving with terrifying speed and ruthless efficiency. One, identified in the subtitles as Sergeant Jess Carter, vaulted over a barricade, grabbed a fleeing soldier by his armor, and threw him into another with a casual flick of her wrist. Another soldier, a short, muscular human labeled Lieutenant Mariana Vega, could be seen catching a plasma blade with her bare hands, breaking it in half, and using the jagged remains to stab her attacker. The footage shifted, showing a captured Narcovian commander tied to a chair, surrounded by human women who appeared relaxed. One was filing her nails. Another was sipping from a steaming mug. The blonde human, Staff Sergeant Riley Quinn, leaned in toward the captive. Okay, big guy. Here's the deal, she said, her tone eerily conversational. You tell us what we want to know, or we introduce you to something worse than death." The Narcovian commander, a veteran of countless wars, scoffed. "You will not break me." Quinn merely smiled and held up a datapad, flicking through images. "Let's see, oh, this one's good." The display zoomed in on an image. It was clothes. The Supreme Arbiter squinted. "What am I looking at?" Lorith didn't answer. He didn't have to. On the screen, the captured alien's expression shifted from defiance to something else. Horrified realization. "No," the captive breathed. "Yes," Quinn said cheerfully. "That's right, buddy. If you don't talk, we're making you wear a crop top that says live, laugh, love." The council chamber erupted into stunned confusion. On screen, the captive Narcovian's resolve shattered. "I will tell you everything," he wailed. The footage cut out. A long, terrible silence followed. Lorith crossed his arms. "Do you understand now?" The Supreme Arbiter's mandibles twitched, his normally measured voice faltering. "You mean to tell me that your officers, trained warriors of the Empire, were broken by psychological warfare via human fashion?" Lorith met his gaze without flinching. "Yes." A deep, uneasy murmur filled the chamber. Several delegates whispered among themselves. Others simply sat in stunned silence. One, a gelatinous entity known as Ambassador XYL, pulsed with shifting colors of distress. What else do they do?" Lorith exhaled. "They mock us. Casually. During combat." The feline delegate from earlier raised a skeptical brow. "Elaborate." Lorith's expression darkened. "In the middle of an ambush, one of them looked me dead in the eye, dodged a plasma shot, and then said, 'Wow, nice aim, buddy.'" His voice shook slightly. "Nice aim, buddy." The feline blinked. "That does not seem particularly harmful." "You don't understand," Lorith snapped. "She patted me on the head before kicking me through a wall. She called me sport." A collective shudder ran through the council. The Supreme Arbiter took a slow breath, attempting to regain control of the room. "This is concerning." He gestured toward his aides. "Prepare a motion to reassess our strategic stance against humanity. If these claims are true, engaging their military may be an unwise course of action." Lorith smirked. "You think?" Another delegate, a skeletal being with bioluminescent eyes, spoke cautiously. "Commander, do you believe we could negotiate with them? Prevent further conflict?" Lorith's smirk faded. He straightened, expression grim. "Let me be clear. Humanity, as a whole, does not want war. They will try to avoid it if given the choice." He let that hang for a moment before adding, "But if you start a fight, you cannot win." A heavy stillness settled over the chamber. Then, suddenly, an aide rushed into the room, breathless. "Supreme Arbiter. Urgent news." The Supreme Arbiter turned sharply. "Report." The aide gulped. "A human fleet has just entered our diplomatic airspace." The silence was deafening. Lorith sighed. "Well, that was faster than I expected." The aide hesitated. "Sir, they are not in attack formation." The council members exchanged wary glances. "Then what are they here for?" the Supreme Arbiter asked. The aide checked his notes. Their transmission states that they are here for," he swallowed, "shopping and sightseeing." Lorith burst out laughing. No one else did. The Supreme Arbiter's claws curled against the table. "We are so doomed." Lorith wiped a tear from his eye. "I told you." The Supreme Arbiter had known fear before. He had witnessed the fall of empires, the collapse of civilizations, and the slow, methodical erosion of power that came when one underestimated an opponent. But nothing had prepared him for the moment he stood before the delegation of humans now seated in the council chamber. They had arrived unarmed, which, paradoxically, made them infinitely more terrifying. At the center of the human envoy sat a woman, tall, broad-shouldered, with a pair of aviator sunglasses perched on her nose despite the chamber's artificial lighting. She leaned back in her chair, legs crossed, hands folded on the table in a way that exuded absolute control. General Alexandra Caldwell. She had not come with threats. She had not come with demands. She had simply arrived, and somehow, that alone had been enough to send the Galactic Council into quiet, unspoken panic. Lorith sat among them now, no longer as a commander of the Narcovian Empire, but as a survivor, a witness to what happened when one underestimated the women of Earth. The Supreme Arbiter cleared his throat, doing his best to maintain the shreds of dignity still available to him. General Caldwell, he began carefully, the Council extends its gratitude for your willingness to open diplomatic discussions. Caldwell merely smirked. The Supreme Arbiter's mandibles twitched. We understand that recent military engagements may have led to some misunderstandings. Misunderstandings, Caldwell repeated, her voice carrying an unmistakable edge of amusement. She adjusted her sunglasses with a slow, deliberate motion. I suppose you could call an unprovoked invasion a misunderstanding. She tilted her head slightly. But see, here's the thing. We don't particularly appreciate misunderstandings when they involve orbital bombardments and attempted planetary takeovers. The Supreme Arbiter fought the urge to shift in his seat. Our intelligence regarding human capabilities was incomplete. Ah, Caldwell said, nodding. So what you're saying is, you didn't do your homework. Silence. Lorith pressed his claws against his face. He had warned them. A delegate from the Romasian Dominion, a species known for its diplomatic finesse, cleared his throat. General Caldwell, surely you understand that war is often dictated by the flow of power and strategy. Our respective governments must operate based on. Did you just try to explain war to me? Caldwell asked, raising an eyebrow. The Romasian hesitated. Well, I grew up with 4 brothers, she interrupted. I've been fighting since I was old enough to walk. She leaned forward slightly. So, unless you want me to explain how to survive a holiday dinner with extended family in return, maybe shut up and let the grown-ups talk. Lorith bit back a laugh. They were doomed. The Supreme Arbiter chose to step in before further humiliation could ensue. General, what is it that humanity wants from this council? Caldwell stretched her arms lazily. Oh, I don't know. An apology would be a nice start. Several delegates flinched. An apology? From the Galactic Council? Unheard of. Unthinkable. Utterly. We formally apologize, the Supreme Arbiter said immediately. Lorith nearly fell out of his seat. Caldwell seemed delighted. See? That wasn't so hard. The Supreme Arbiter took a slow, steadying breath. Beyond that, what does humanity require to ensure peaceful relations moving forward? Caldwell tapped her fingers against the table. We could ask for reparations. We could ask for planetary concessions. We could demand an official surrender from the Narcovian Empire. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle before shrugging. But honestly, we're not interested in ruling over a bunch of bureaucratic space lizards. We just want one simple thing. The chamber waited. She grinned. You don't mess with us. Ever. Again. The Supreme Arbiter hesitated. And if another faction were to provoke humanity? Caldwell's smirk widened. Oh, don't worry, she said. They won't. The chamber filled with a suffocating silence. They knew. They believed her. Because somewhere, deep in the collective instincts of every species present, an immutable truth had been carved into history. You do not start fights with human women. The Supreme Arbiter inhaled slowly. The Galactic Council will convene immediately to discuss official policy changes regarding Earth and its colonies. Good choice, Caldwell said, standing up. Now, if you'll excuse us. Lorith leaned in. You're leaving already? Caldwell turned to him, still grinning. Oh yeah, our job's done here. A sinking feeling curled in his gut. Then why bring an entire fleet? Her smirk deepened. Oh, she said, adjusting her sunglasses. We're on vacation. The Supreme Arbiter froze. The Council froze. Lorith's eye widened. Oh no. Caldwell turned to her second-in-command, a sharp-eyed woman with a mischievous grin. Lieutenant, how long do you think it'll take before the shopping district realizes what's happening? Give it about an hour before total collapse, the lieutenant replied cheerfully. Excellent. And just like that, humanity won again.